Welcome to Module 8. We've covered containers, flow, subflow, private flow. Now we move to loop scopes, for each and parallel for each. For each takes a collection and processes each item sequentially, one at a time, one after another, guaranteed order. If any item fails, the loop stops. It's the workhorse of bulk processing in Mule. Let's see exactly how it works. Here's a real flow. The payload is an array of orders. A for each scope wraps a database insert. For each takes that array and loops. Item 1 runs through the database insert, then item 2, then item 3. Inside the loop, the current item becomes the payload. After the loop, the payload reverts to the array. Errors? If item 50 fails and you don't catch it, items 51 to 100 never run. That's for each. Sequential processing with guaranteed order. Click for each and the Properties panel opens at the bottom. Now, a lot of tutorials will tell you there is a field called variable name that holds the current item and that you read it with vars.item. That is Mule 3. It is not true in Mule 4, and it is one of the fastest ways to fail an interview. Look at the real screen. You get display name, collection, which is what you loop over, and if you leave it empty it defaults to the payload. Counter variable name, which defaults to counter and holds the iteration number, not the item. Batch size, which defaults to 1, and root message variable name, which defaults to root message and holds the original message from before the loop started. Now here's the part worth remembering. None of these fields are mandatory. Drag for each onto the canvas, change nothing, and it runs. So where is the current item? The current item is the payload. Inside the loop, payload is the thing you are processing right now, and vars.counter tells you which pass you are on. Now the important part. Before for each, the payload is an array with hundreds of items. Inside the loop, on iteration 1, the current item becomes the payload. On iteration 2, the next item becomes the payload. After the loop completes, the payload reverts to the array. It's unchanged. If the scope modifies the item, the array isn't updated unless you explicitly build a new one inside the loop. And critically, if the loop errors on iteration 50, iterations 51 onward never run. The loop stops. Those items are lost unless you catch the error and continue. Now the mistake I see most often, and it is a performance killer. You have 1,000 orders. You drop a for each on the canvas, and inside the loop you put a database insert, one row at a time. That runs, and it looks correct, and it is brutally slow. 1,000 iterations means 1,000 round trips to the database. Open a connection, send one row, wait for the answer, close. The insert itself is fast. It is the round trip that kills you. 50 seconds for something that should take half a second. So what do you do instead? Declare the variable outside. Before the loop, set variable, call it all rows, set it to an empty array. Inside the loop, you do not write to the database at all. You transform the item and you append it. Set variable all rows equals vars.allRows plus payload. Then after the loop closes, one single database bulk insert, using vars.allRows, one round trip, same 1,000 rows. And the same rule applies to HTTP calls and file writes, not just databases. Collect inside, write once outside. And honestly, the best version of this, if all you are doing inside the loop is reshaping the data, delete the for each completely. One transform message maps the entire array in data weave, then one bulk insert. No loop at all. Fewer components, and data weave is faster at it than a loop ever will be. Transactions inside for each are strict. Either all items succeed or the whole transaction rolls back. There is no partial success. You can't save items 1 through 49 and skip the bad one at 50. It's all or nothing. If you need selective failure, you must wrap the risky operation in a try-scope inside the for each loop and continue the error. That way, one failed item doesn't stop the entire loop. Naming for each scopes. Describe what you're looping over. For each order, process items. Validate customers. Don't call it for each and leave it at that. And the variable name should be singular. If you're looping over orders, the item variable should be order, not item, not temp. Order tells the next person exactly what each iteration is processing. Good practice. Use for each for processing collections sequentially where order matters. When you're validating items or building results one at a time. When you need to know which item failed. Bad practice. Looping over 100,000 items without considering performance. For each block synchronously, each iteration waits for the previous to finish. Calling an expensive API for each item and not handling timeouts, or modifying the original array while looping over it. Mule doesn't like that. When not to use for each. If you're processing huge collections, tens of thousands of items. For each will block and take forever. Use batch scope instead. It's designed for volume with checkpoint recovery. If you need parallel processing, use parallel for each. If you're just building a transformed collection, use transform message with data weave. It's cleaner and often faster. And if each item is independent and can be processed in parallel, definitely don't use for each. That's leaving performance on the table. How many for each scopes per flow? Usually 1 or 2. If you find yourself with 3 nested for each loops, stop. Each nesting level multiplies your iteration count. 100 outer items times 100 inner items equals 10,000 iterations. That quickly becomes slow. Flatten if possible. Use a single for each with more complex logic inside, or restructure your data so you only loop once. Here's a real scenario. An order arrives with 50 line items. You need to validate each item, check inventory, and reserve stock for each. Using for each, you loop. Validate item 1, check inventory, reserve stock. Move to item 2, sequential, ordered and guaranteed complete. If item 30 fails because inventory is gone, items 31 through 50 never run. You can wrap the risky part in a try scope and log the error so you see which item failed instead of a loop just stopping. The questions about for each. 1. Does for each change the payload? Yes. Inside the loop, the payload is the current item. After the loop, it reverts to the array. 2. What if you don't set variable name? Mule uses item as the default. 3. If iteration 50 errors, what about 51? They never run. The loop stops. 4. What's batch size for? Accumulating items. Batch size 10 means the scope runs with batches of 10 items, not single items. 5. Can you modify the original array inside for each? You can modify the items, but the array itself is immutable. 6. For each vs parallel. For each is sequential and ordered. Parallel for each is concurrent and unordered. 7. For each inside a transaction? Yes. All items succeed or the transaction rolls back. To recap, for each processes items sequentially, in order, one after another. The payload becomes the current item inside the loop. If any item fails, the loop stops and remaining items never run. Batch size is optional and accumulates items. All items must succeed or the transaction rolls back. Name the scope for what you're looping over, and the variable for the individual item. For each is the workhorse of bulk processing. Next module. Parallel for each. The same loop, but concurrent.